That is the old distinction between culture and civilization. So the South, the Catholic South, has culture, and what we have is a civilization. And then I thought, good Lord, what all the smaller countries, like Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, do they belong to the culture of the South? Or are they belonging to the barbarian North? Or will they pushed out again? And he never spoke, in his article, he never spoke about democracy. So if you have this distinction again between South and North, between culture and civilization, the main idea of Europe as a market, as a cultural unity, etc., is that also these countries, from Bulgaria to the old Yugoslavia, belong to Europe. And if you don't mention them anymore, if you are only speaking of culture and the culture of the Catholic countries, then you make a big mistake. Because the greatest development in the last years, speaking about culture and books, we are here for book talks, is that with all the translations going around the globe, we have found an idea of cultural globalization which is much more than only the distinction between culture and civilization. So I was a little bit frightened to listen to Giorgio because I thought, if he is right, and if there will be a distinction in the next couple of years, there will be also new wars possible. You know that the Catholic South is fighting against the Protestantic North, etc. And all the rest of Europe is in the middle and will be destroyed. So I was not that happy. Coming here to Madrid, and as you know, in little Germany, we don't have a Madrid anymore. We don't have, I mean, Hitler more or less is responsible for the destruction of all of our cities. And going to Madrid and compare it to Frankfurt or even Berlin, it is, you know, like day and night. So, of course, you feel an old culture. And of course, you know that that the countries like France and Spain, that they have a longer tradition in literature than we have. For us, literature started in the midst of the 18th century. Before it was the Queen, or the King, or the Kaiser, or the state, but only in from 1750 on we have our literature. We have no Cervantes, and we have no Shakespeare, and we have no Racine, etc. So I think if the book production, the book producing, remember what they have done in the past, they are much more better prepared for the future. We have to talk about literature, like Manuel in our session did. We have to talk about literature again, not about distribution, e-book, etc., etc. That is second hand. The first thing is, why do we need literature, or do we need it at all? Why do we need it? Why it is important? Why it has some importance for our lives. Our life is short, as you know, and you have to decide which books you should read. You know, you can't read them all. And if you read for years and years bad books, your taste is bad, and you will die with a bad taste. And I always think that life is so short that we only read very good books. So publishing in our world has a lot to do with quality. And the big chains and the big companies, they are not allowed to look after the quality. They have to look after the money. And that is the reason why bad books like 50 Shades of Grey are becoming these big bestsellers, even if a man in Valencia or Barcelona is not, or Madrid is not understanding what this lady is talking about. But it's only a question of marketing, not of quality anymore. And so I think, speaking of independency in publishing, means nothing else than publishing very good books. That's the only thing we have to do. And since we are on this world, let's say 80 years, if we are not smoking, we have 50 years to work, and you can read, as a good reader, 50 books a year, and that's all. So you can read 2,500 books. But of course, it's much more fun to read 2,500 good books than to read all this trash. So when I am, as an old man now, traveling around, I only want to talk about quality. And I don't want to talk about this market and this chain and these problems. There are problems, definitely. But I also want to talk about how different countries solve the problems. For example, Austria, 8 million people, they have discovered that culture is a value for attraction. People are attracted by Austria because all the modernism from Robert Musil to Arnold Schönberg, from Hermann Broch to Joseph Roth, I mean, all these writers came from Austria between 1750 and 1900. In these 150 years, you had this enormous amount of richness and quality and ideas to make a better world with literature, music, painting, etc. And since the Austrian government discovered the attraction of culture, they put a lot of money into the cultural business. So they help publishers to publish for a book or even for a whole company. They are paying for readings, etc. They are paying for presenting the books outside in foreign countries. They help writers to get grants, etc. And I think that is a very good example. Europe will survive by its culture. And we have to invest a lot of money in culture. And we do that, of course, with theater, with opera, with exhibitions, is quite natural to say, if you are going to have a huge new exhibition of Miro, the state has to pay, the banks have to pay in order to get that exhibited, because people say it is important for Spain to show this great master of the arts in America or England or Germany or wherever. But it's very rare that the politicians are proud of their writers. And I think they should be a little bit more proud about their writers and support them in a better way. And then we don't have to lament about the chains and so on. Because if everybody is proud of the writers, there will be new bookshops, new publishing companies, etc. The whole infrastructure will change. We found a foundation in Germany some years ago, Stiftung Lesen, Foundation for Reading, which is very important. And they have congresses, they are producing books and catalogs, they are helping schools with material, they are supporting reading groups, etc. And that is partly backed by the government, partly by private sponsorship, and the result is that everybody is at least knowing about this foundation. If they are really successful, I can't say now, it's not a question of measurement, but the pure fact that that foundation was necessary is an example that you have to look after the ability of reading. The reading ability is, I have to say, in the small classes, so poor. The ability of reading is so poor, and it's getting poorer and poorer. People can work with a computer. They know how to deal with iPads, etc. They have much more intelligence with technical equipment. But the reading of the world means much more. That means that you can think, and not only think, but that you can try to make your own commentaries on the world, etc. And I think we have to teach reading. Reading is, I mean, it started with the Bible, and the Bible was the text, a huge book, and everybody was repeating and writing commentaries on commentaries, commentaries on commentaries, and only since 250 years we have a kind of bourgeois reading. Since 250 years, since societies became more liberal, people are reading books and people are interested in books. And for me, the creation of the big encyclopédie by Diderot d'Alembert is a triumph of book publishing. These huge books in which you have collected the whole knowledge about the world comes together in books, and you have these wonderful plates so that you can show in pictures what is described in the beginning. And the reason why this encyclopedia is still one of the main and big sources of knowledge is because it has this passion still in its pages the passion the passion and the ability to describe on 10 pages, let's say, the soul. What is the soul? The soul in the 18th century. I mean, if you ask a schoolboy today, sit down and write down what is a soul. You know, well, soul, you can open the body, there's nothing in it. It's blood and flesh and nothing else. There is no soul. But I think we lost 3/4 of our culture because of not reading it properly. And I'm deeply convinced that Europe is culture and nothing else. Culture and wars, and a lot of wars, but what will survive is culture and nothing else. So we have to teach culture. And after you have taught culture, you can teach business.